Hi, my name is Lee Solden. Um, Starting a couple minutes early here. Um, this is a live video at the World Languages Facebook page. Um, Today is August 4th, 2020. My name is again Lee Solden. Um, I have been learning and teaching languages by a system that I developed slash kind of stumbled upon really by a series of accidents um, starting December of 2018, ending for the most part by the end of March 2019. Um, I am learning and teach what I know: Greek, Italian, Dutch, French, Spanish, German, Russian, Korean, Hindi, Mandarin, mainstream Arabic, and Brazilian Portuguese. Okay. And I teach them all the same way. It's a type of natural language acquisition, but it's my own particular type, which I've labeled accelerated immersion, because it's kind of like what happens when a child is born in a country, or if you move to a country, except it's I call it accelerated because it's rather systematic. It does not take things to chance. You might move to a country and not find people to speak to you. I've talked to people like that. They've moved somewhere, and the people around them wanted to practice English with them rather than talk in their own language. And at least for short visit, they end up not speaking the language like they thought they would. Well, with my system, I get you started right away, surrounding yourself with the language for several hours a day by passively listening to it. And I see it's 5 o'clock now, so I'll introduce myself again. I'm Lee Solden, and I teach by a system I call accelerated immersion. Okay. And again, this is live on the World Languages page on Facebook. This is being done on August 4th, 2020. It is the last in this particular series that I'm doing, but I'm gonna start a new series tomorrow. Um, Today will be the last of my lectures on my system, and today in particular is going to be about the uh, read through part of my system. My system has three parts: get you to surround yourself with the passive listening, number one. Number two, while surrounding yourself with the passive listening, and after you've done this like 21 hours, you heard a lot, several hours a day for like a week. The second step is ear tuning exercises. And I have you do those for an hour a day for a few days, maybe for a whole week. And you start slacking off on that, maybe a half hour a day for a week, and then 15 minutes. Eventually, by a year later, you're still doing ear tuning exercises, but maybe only 5 minutes twice a week at that point. But you always keep trying to listen very carefully to a language, syllable by syllable, and understanding exactly what's being said. That's what ear tuning is. Um, Now, I covered ear tuning exercises in a previous video. I've also covered passive listening. So this is the last part, read throughs. And I've also, each one of these lectures, I go over the whole system briefly. Um, but today is going to be mostly about read throughs, which is the bulk of what you do if you learn from me. Now, mind you, when I say the bulk of, yeah, you're going to be listening to the language for several hours a day, but that's passive listening. It's not supposed to take any of your time. That passive listening is like you're eating a meal, or maybe you're watching your favorite TV program and you want to learn Spanish, so you have the Spanish playing very lightly near you, so that if you bent your ear toward the Spanish, listen very carefully, you could hear that Spanish is being played. That's loud enough. Enjoy your program. If the Spanish bothers you any, turn it down further. You just want it there so your ears getting it is for your speech center, okay? So that passive listening does not take any of your time. Ear tuning exercises don't take that much time either. I mean, initially, it's the most important thing. The passive listening too, of course, but the ear tuning exercises are way, way more important at the start of my program, and they do take some time, like 1 hour a day, and then less and less over time. But people who skimp on the ear tuning exercises don't end up learning the language as fast. Why? Having a native ear for a language, or as close as you can get to a native ear, is the quickest way to learn it. If you hear it really, really well, and then you're listening to a lot of it at the same time, you're getting uh, introduced to what those words mean that you're hearing, you can learn it pretty darn fast. Um, and I tell any beginning student that the time they spend on the ear tuning exercises initially, by far, is what's going to tell me how fast they are going to progress in the language. Now, when do you start doing a lot of read throughs? You start doing a lot of read throughs when you can hear the language very well. Now, typically, I start people learning like 3 days after they start doing ear tuning exercises for most languages. Because for most languages, you have a breakthrough in your ear for the language where it quits being so fuzzy and it kind of sounds like clear words to you. Um, but that's more or less because people really want to start learning the words. Really, they should go, even though they hear the words pretty well after 3 days of ear tuning to Spanish, they should go a whole week and keep doing an hour a day of ear tuning, then wait after a week goes by and then start learning the words. Only because of this. I don't like to waste anyone's time. And I know it's more effective if you can hear the Spanish a lot better than you can after the 3 days. However, a lot of people I start teaching them 3 days, I let them know, hey, don't stop your ear tuning exercises. Um, Now, with that said, ear tuning and read throughs kind of go hand in hand with each other to an extent as far as getting a person's pronunciation right, because um, both are listening to the language. One, the ear tuning exercise is listening very carefully to syllable by syllable exactly what sounds being made by the speaker. And then the read throughs is listening for understanding. But in both cases, they are listening. And so, what is a read through? A read through is a way to associate your target language words with ones that you already know, either in your native language or in a second language or one that you're learning. It has to be something you know a little bit. I mean, if you don't know any of it, it's not going to work very well for read throughs. So, but you know, it can work. If a person is just starting to learn English, and if I define everything in Spanish by English words, well, yeah, I have to teach you the English words so that you can use the English words to learn the Spanish. It still works. You end up learning kind of two languages. One you're not learning my method per se, but you're learning some English that way. Um, but let's say we have an English speaker who wants to learn Spanish. Well, in this case, I, as your teacher, okay, or actually, or the person providing you the system to learn from, either way, I'm going to one way or another let you know what the first sentence in a story means. So here you are reading a story, this one called the Little Prince. It's on YouTube in Spanish. Okay, I might tell you to go there, for instance, if I'm teaching you Spanish, and you've been listening to that story for the last week, and you've accumulated 21 hours. So you've heard, and you're listening to it more when you start your ear tuning exercises. And you're doing ear tuning to that same story, and then your ear tunes into it. You're hearing the Spanish pretty good, and now I'm still having you do the passive listening now for further ear tuning and for picking up the vocabulary. But you can't pick up the vocabulary out of thin air. You don't know any Spanish. Someone has to tell you what those words mean. And there's more than one way to go about that. Typically, I either send a person a message saying, okay, first sentence says da 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 da. Okay, I tell them what it says in English. I tell them, okay, what each individual word means in the sentence, and any phrases. I tell them what those phrases mean, and so they have the whole sentence definition. They have the phrase definitions. They have the word definitions, and now they kind of know what that first sentence means. And I go a little further than that. For any verbs, I only tell them what the form means that's in that sentence, but I also always tell them what the infinitive form is, like that means the to form. So if it's the verb uh, he goes that's in the sentence, okay, that this verb means he goes. Okay, and then I'll tell them the infinitive to go is this. So, but I don't get very deep into grammar at all. Okay, my main purpose is that the person knows what that sentence means. And does that person have to study it? No. I don't care at all if you know what this sentence means 5 minutes from now. Don't care. I just want you to know what the sentence means at this very second. And then I'm going to have you listen to the sentence in Spanish while you're reading it. I'm going to ask you at that point, think about whether you understand what was just said. Okay, try to make an effort at trying to understand the Spanish. And you may not understand the Spanish at all at that point, and it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Your speech center works 20 times faster than your conscious mind. So your speech center is picking up what the association is between the Spanish words and the English words here. Okay. Overnight, what your speech center caught, it'll work on your altogether. By the when you wake up in the morning, you have some Spanish in your permanent memory. Okay, this thing called paradigms. Your brain is working on paradigms for you to interpret the Spanish language into some kind of meaning. Okay, so after you've looked over your notes, you're going to play the Spanish while reading it. Probably not understand any of that. The first day you're doing this, you're not going to understand what the Spanish says. That's okay. You can look over your notes again, listen to it again, listen to it for a third time, and I'm gonna tell you that that's enough. Now go to the next step. Next step is you're gonna look over your notes if you want to, and now you're gonna listen to that Spanish sentence with your eyes closed, and seeing how well you understand it by ear alone, and then do it again and again Now, altogether, you've listened to the Spanish sentence 6 times, 3 times while reading, and 3 times with your eyes closed. And you still probably don't really understand what the guy's saying. I mean, you hear it perfectly. You've been doing the ear tuning exercises, so you can hear it okay. But it doesn't mean you can take full speed Spanish coming at you and understand it. That's okay. You go on to sentence number 2, and you do the exact same thing. 3 times reading while listening, 3 times listening with your eyes closed. And then sentence 3, sentence 4, sentence 5, sentence 6. And you keep doing that for about a half hour. Call it good enough. Call that good enough. You follow that up with 2 hours of passive listening to that same audiobook. Why? Well, your speech center just got that input from the read throughs. Now I want you to get input from passive listening on top of that. I find that passive listening boosts the read throughs tremendously, the effectiveness of how fast you learn the language. Okay. I mean, I've made some pretty crazy claims sometimes, but I really think it's several times faster. Okay. From my observations. Um, by the way, the whole learning by passive listening after lightly studying something, that is the very first thing I stumbled across back in middle of December uh, of 2018. I realized that I'd picked up a whole lot of like a couple hundred Greek words because I had Greek playing in the background all week. I did not study Greek that week, didn't pay any attention to it, but I had lightly looked at these words. I was playing a common phrase video. Is designed for tourists that were going to go to Greece, or it's also a secondary purpose of getting anybody introduced to the Greek language. Well, they simply said the phrase in English and then they said it in Greek. Well, I looked up all the words in Greek, so I knew what the individual words meant. At least I looked them up. I didn't ever study any of them. So I had a notebook and had all those words from the video in the notebook. And when I got done with that, it's a half-hour video. Took 4 months about to do it, so I'm working really slow. I might go 2 weeks between a Greek lesson, and anyway, so I eventually looked up the words. Then 1 week of playing it in the background, I picked it up inadvertently by accident, and this accident is where this whole system started of mine. Okay, and well, every time I run across something, I I tinker with it. Well, okay, so I learned this Greek after, even though I was studying Hindi all week that week. I immediately stopped everything pretty much, uh, almost 100%, and did this. I looked up all the words in a second common phrase video for Greek, put that on for passive listening, and then I went on and studied Russian that week for the whole week. And sure enough, I knew that video, the words, the Greek words in that video a week later. And so at that point, I switched everything over to this read through system. Well, specifically, I would uh, look up some words in some common phrases. I know the whole phrase, all the words in the phrase, and then I would put it on for passive listening. And periodically, I would, uh, from that point, I started developing my whole read through system where the read 3 times. I started experimenting with what the fastest way to pick up common phrases was. And it come out to where if you read it 3 times while listening and then just listen 3 times, that's the fastest way I could figure it. That's the fastest way I was picking stuff up. So I stayed in that pattern, and I learned like 400 common phrases in Hindi that way, 130 common phrases in Mandarin. But back then I didn't know, wasn't well tuned to the tones of Mandarin back then. But so I was doing everything by common phrases. Okay. So again, I'm just pointing out that the whole read through system predates when I learned how to uh, tune my ear into a language by using ear tuning exercises. So when I learned how to tune my ear into stuff at full speed speech, well, my read through system was already there. I just simply adapted it to full speed speech. Okay. So some finer points about read throughs. Okay. When do you do a read through? Well, if you're like me, and for the most part, you're learning on your own. And right there, I got to tell you, I've had a lot of help. I've had a lot of help with Dutch, especially recently. I've had a lot of help with Hindi. I've had a lot of help with Brazilian Portuguese, and a lot of help with Arabic. A lot of help with Arabic. I mean, I tell you, a lot of people are willing to help me with Arabic. Never have any problem finding someone to give me help in Arabic. So I give a shout out to all the people out there that have helped me. Okay, so I'm sure I'm probably missing some other languages people have helped me. Well, people have helped me with French, for instance, and who knows what else, Spanish. Uh, okay, so I've had a lot of help, but for the most part, I for me to learn something by doing a read through, that means that I have to get a dictionary out, figure out in a grammar book, figure out what is in front of me, what something means, and then once I have that set up, then I can do the read throughs. So what I chose to do for quite a few months, and mind you, you take up really, I've only been at this for about 6 months where I'm actually doing stuff like the read throughs. But even during that 6 months, most of my time was setting up the read throughs. You take 6 months divided by the 12 languages, that's 2 weeks. But since most of the time was setting up read throughs, I haven't even spent a week doing the read throughs that I'm telling everybody else to do. I just haven't. I mean, um, I know they work. I've learned a whole lot really fast in all these languages whenever I've done it, but I'm too busy teaching people, setting up the systems, and teaching people about my system. And I hope to eventually get around to, and I do put some time learning. Like today I spent the day going through a audiobook for French. It's French listening practice. And I'm halfway through it. Been working on it for 3 days. I'm halfway through it, looking up any words I don't know in French or any ones I don't wasn't. I was surprised at a definition I didn't know. For instance, it's more of that than actually not knowing the word. It's usually I know the word, but I didn't realize you can use it that way. Okay, so I spent a lot of time the last few days setting up French for read throughs in the future. Um, I am learning slowly but surely. Okay,